Hello everybody and welcome to Amphlett Reviews. Today we're doing another Hong Kong review for 88 Films lineup and brand new release for Black Cat in this brand new kind of premium edition. Rigid case, very similar to kind of Story of Ricky's edition as well. Really liking these editions. 88 Films are popping out recently for kind of arguably films that never really had the 5-star treatment, films that have been stuck on VHS or poor quality kind of DVDs or dubs kind of thing, and these getting a brand new 2K transfers, also brand new extras and behind the scenes. This is a great edition, especially for the booklet as well. I always like reading the booklets of these editions, and this one has a really fantastic kind of interview diving into the kind of the making of this one and the second one also, which I think is really good. It has a very limited amount of extras also on the actual editions, but the two audio commentaries and the brand new interview with the main actress also in this film is really good insight kind of thing also. But yeah, a film that never would have had the 5-star treatment probably anywhere else. I know it has got a kind of Hong Kong release Blu-ray, but I don't think that's a very good transfer from far as I know. So this is a nice kind of edition for a film that I've never heard of. I know this is a soft reboot of Nikita, the French film, which it makes me quite curious about the film, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to kind of check it out and pick it up. So without further ado, let's dive into Black Cat. Black Cat was released in 1991, directed by Stephen Cheng, who also did the second film, Black Cat 2, which I'm very curious to check out at some point. I know they did a very kind of cheap, rare DVD market and very much on the VHS kind of era. Very similar to this one, but at least this film did get a kind of a Hong Kong release Blu-ray. It's had a little bit of attention kind of thing based on the kind of the source material, but the second one I think has very much been a kind of forgotten kind of like movie, stuck on the kind of the format it's on, being it's almost a kind of a direct sequel made in 1992, literally a year after this one, and kind of kick-started kind of this main leading actress's kind of career in the kind of the action genre, in the kind of hidden kind of Hong Kong kind of scenery. Late 90s kind of Hong Kong movies can be a bit kind of divisive in the kind of in its direction. Comedy-based, action-based movies, buddy cop movies kind of thing, which I've already established within Skinny Tiger and Fatty Dragon, which that had a very specific market, doing the more kind of fun comedy route, but also doing a kind of buddy kind of action cop based movie. And then you get the more kind of darker, serious kind of thrillers, something like True Crime Jackie Chan was doing kind of thing, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. And this definitely is more into that kind of lineup, very serious, very kind of dark kind of thriller, stylized kind of movie, very much kind of Bond kind of very about to be Jason Bourne type movie kind of thing. This film is an adaptation and based on the kind of Nikita story, the French film. I think was released in the early 90s also, and this is a straight up adaptation of it. Well, almost anyway, in a weird way. The original plan from the director anyway, he wanted to do a straight up remake of Nikita, and he got beaten to the punch. Nikita's story is so interesting and so kind of easily adaptable, and I can see why a lot of movies have kind of ripped it off, have done their own versions of Nikita, or kind of were inspired to kind of do their own take on it. Even the director himself is still making the same type of movie and still trying to recapture that magic. In case you're wondering what my thoughts and opinions of Nikita anyway, in terms of the general and that type of movie, it follows a kind of very troubled woman, set in France kind of thing. She's a bit of a drug addict, she's in a bad crowd. She basically kills some people that she shouldn't have done, and basically this kind of black ops team, black operation, take her, recruit her, and basically saying, you're dead. You have nothing, you have no life, you have no identity, you come from a true background. We're going to reshape you, retrain you into a deadly killing weapon assassin for hire, and we're going to throw you out there in the world. And if you don't succeed, well, you're already dead, so we can just throw you back in the trash in a sense. That's what the film is, and then she kind of learns to kind of find her own inner peace, and then she finds love as the process goes along, and then she has to decide between kind of doing her job, but she has no true choice for, she has no kind of free will in that sense, all kind of follow this kind of love story angle kind of thing. And this one does a similar kind of thing to it as well, but changes it up and does slightly different tweaks and kind of different twists on the kind of story. And there's been so many different adaptations. Obviously the US version did Point No Return in 1992, which I haven't seen. I don't know if it's any good or not, but I know it's very PG-13. I know it's very kind of bloodless and doesn't have the same kind of edge that the kind of this film does, or even the French film does. At least the French film has a little bit of kind of raw nature, gritty nature to it. But in terms of that first film anyway, in terms of the Nikita's story, I think it's fine. I like the first half of that film. I don't like the second half at all. I don't like the main leading actress. I know it's kind of the point a little bit. Maybe you're not supposed to like the main initial star because she's meant to be very insufferable, and then you kind of grow to like her as the film goes along. I get that idea, and there's a lot of other movies that do some similar things also, but for me, didn't really do anything. I really didn't like the second half of that film. I didn't like where it went. I didn't like where the direction of the story. Definitely did not like the ending also in that first film. I think he did a much better film later on called Leung. They even did a TV series back in the early 2000s, and I think they even did a French TV series also, which I think is quite interesting. So yeah, the story's kind of well known. It's kind of, the setups, the beats kind of. So you're probably wondering, Andrew, what do you think of Black Cat? I quite enjoyed it. I thought it was a pretty solid 90s kind of nice slick kind of thriller. Nothing kind of groundbreaking, nothing kind of, breaking the mold or anything. I've very seen this kind of story before in other movies. Really nice kind of gorgeous cinematography. I think it looks really sharp, really lovely within this kind of brand new kind of 2K scan. I think for something maybe a bit more low res, maybe a DVD quality or VHS quality, it isn't going to pop as much compared to what it would on maybe a Blu-ray. So maybe my appreciation is a little bit different in that sense than someone maybe who watched it back in the day kind of thing. I think the film knows what it wants to be, and I don't think it tries to be anything else other than that. I think it has a nice kind of progression of in terms of its character and where it goes, in terms of its story. I like the journey that we go on with this main character. Black Cat stars Jade Leung in her first kind of feature-length performance, a model to a action leading star into this film with no real training, no real background in kind of anything that this film actually has to offer. She has to carry the entire film, also do kind of really physical kind of action set pieces, and really kind of deliver in terms of a kind of an emotional, interesting character arc from kind of start to finish. It's a big task for a kind of first, for leading actress. I think the Lakita story works really well for her type of first performance. I think it's really well handled in that sense. The fact that she's kind of a little bit raw and a little bit kind of uneven, a little bit in places during the first kind of portion anyway. And the fact the film was shot chronological order based on the kind of brand new interview on the actual Blu-ray edition itself makes a lot of sense to do that also, because you get a clear sense of her performance as the film goes along from start all the way to finish, and you get a sense of her journey and turning into this kind of assassin character, wild, a bit more kind of nastier kind of thing and a bit more vicious, to a lot more of a kind of calmer, a bit more of a calculated, someone who is, we don't know her background, we don't know who she is really, to be honest. And that's that mystery, that first half, I think it's so intriguing, so well presented, and it's very quiet as well. There's not much dialogue, especially from the main actress. She doesn't really say much during the first kind of portion. She's just kind of encountering different people. The first portion of the film is set in Canada, I believe, and she kind of gets herself into a little bit of trouble, and that kind of really escalates into kind of a bigger deal till leading into the second half also. Clearly just a very troubled person who is just escaping from something. Maybe she's done something in the past, but it's that mystery, it's that kind of like, behind the scenes a little bit we don't know about and still don't know about within the film, that makes that character even more interesting. And she's definitely been through a hard time based on from her expressions, her performance, the fact that she's just so vicious and so aggressive in the first portion of that film kind of thing. She's willing to look for a fight, she wants to kick some ass, she wants to stab, she wants to punch kind of thing, and she doesn't want people telling her what to do or how to go about certain things, which I think is quite interesting, and that leads it to a much more of a deadlier thing later on. I thought the first half was really well executed in terms of kind of the pacing, in terms of just really kind of dive you into this world. Great cinematography, great soundtrack. Even though the soundtrack itself does kind of repeat itself quite a lot throughout the film, you're going to hear the same beats over and over again kind of thing. I don't mind it, it's perfectly fine. I think it works with the tone of the film, it definitely works with the cinematography of the film, but I love the shots, I love the kind of the wides, and I love the kind of the little details here and there. Going from Canada to a kind of US base training facility, which is quite interesting. I quite like where that goes. This is where we get introduced to our second character, played by Simon Yam, who was great also in the film. Always a pleasure to see Simon from the film. Mr. PTU, also from Naked Killer, also definitely pops up in a lot of these kind of Hong Kong movies, late in the kind of 90s Hong Kong movies. Film, even though it's kind of a small kind of cameo, extended cameo type role, he's the recruiter, he's the guy who basically decided to pick her for the program, the Black Cat program, and kind of train her up and kind of help her along the journey, but also kind of doing very much everything in his interest in terms of his kind of shadow organization kind of government. The problem is that it always focuses on the main character, never kind of deviates too much away from her kind of thing, which I think is quite interesting. Everything that happens in the film in terms of her kind of experience, in terms of kind of her view and her encounters with different kind of bad guys and her kind of love interest towards the third act, is always from her kind of point of view. It's really kind of takes away. We get very small little scenes here and there from Simon Yam's character, but you never really know much about him. You never know much really who he is or what his motivation really is. He's just there to kind of use this asset to his advantage. He's invested in this person. He's kind of put a chip in her head, the kind of the Black Cat program, and basically trained her up, kind of give her the facilities, give her the tools to kind of be the best assassin, and he's invested in her to do the job properly. If not, well, you're disposable in that sense, and that has definitely been tested throughout the film. 1 minute is really nice and really kind of offering flowers and being kind of cutesy in that sense, but 1 minute is kind of cold and calculated, saying You've got to get rid of him, you know, he's a liability. You never really get to know much about his kind of character, his kind of background, or why this kind of organisation even exists in the first place. You know they're recruiting women, they know they're recruiting many kind of different kind of people from different backgrounds. Where the film has a much more of a kind of world building kind of scope to it kind of thing, even though it's a very specific kind of narrow storyline on her character and her journey from start to finish. I like the fact there is kind of side pieces and little characters and, you know, various kind of other places that she kind of ends up being in, going from like Canada to kind of the US base facility to Hong Kong and then eventually kind of Japan. It definitely goes and travels in definitely various kind of circles, and there's various kind of characters that kind of get introduced and kind of don't really see again, or much of extended cameos. Or I like the fact there's just other people in that world doing kind of similar things that she is doing. And you know, there's even like they even highlight a girl that's from Canada also in the same program that she's in, but we don't follow her character. We see a little bit in the film, you know, we see a few conversations with her handler and her little tasks, but we never really follow that. There's rarely any kind of like typical kind of, you know, you would expect kind of conflict. I would expect a typical kind of back and forth between the kind of the handler and the main character and various kind of other people in the same program. I think that was something a little bit focused on in Nikita, but this one you don't really focus on much on that. There's very little kind of conflict in the early portion of the film, especially in the training aspect. I really like how this all builds up to the initial kind of first action-based sequence in a wedding, which I think is absolutely fantastic. Definitely really exciting. I like the fact that she's just kind of amateurish a little bit towards the first couple of portions of the film. Gets definitely scraped and bruises kind of thing, and she definitely is very not unsure and very scared and kind of adrenaline filled kind of thing. And I like how those action set pieces definitely all kind of come together in that first initial set piece, and then everything after that point I think is actually quite well done and quite well handled. You know, some are quite small here and there. The Japan one I think is the smallest one, but just have some nice kind of set pieces. I like the fact that what she does in terms of her assassination kind of attempts I think is quite good. The best one is the one in the warehouse where she's taking out a kind of a politician I think in a car. I won't ruin too much about what that sequence is, but I quite liked how the way that was handled. It felt very kind of, you know, Hitman, very kind of Jason Bourne kind of thing in terms of that level of time of performance. Environmental kills, it's great. You know, nice kind of little set pieces here and there, and there's some really good ones in between towards the kind of second and third act of the film. The ending one I think is definitely the biggest in terms of its kind of big explosions and kind of, you know, big set piece kind of thing, very dramatic, kind of over the top a little bit, but really well handled. You know, there isn't many action sequences in the entire film. I think there's about 4 in total, you know, one big one and a couple of small ones here and there, but the main focus is about this main character and her journey from start to finish. And that leads into the film, which I won't say too much about, you know, what actually happens. My first initial thoughts were like, that's a bit of a weak ending, but I thought about a little bit more in terms of the context of the story, in terms of where it takes, you know, with this character, what she's sacrificing, what she's willing to do to kind of maintain, like, you know, someone else's, like, she cares for his life in that sense, and, you know, how she's in this kind of program. It's definitely not the most kind of like happy ending ever. It's not the most fulfilling ending. It's a little bit abrupt, a little bit. That kind of flows with the flow of the film a little bit. It's very consistent. The ending of the film is very consistent with the tone of the rest of the film. It's very quiet. It's very bleak. It's very kind of, you know, still. Kind of, I know it's kind of delivery kind of thing, and I think that works. That type of ending works for this type of film. Maybe not another film like this, but I kind of like this, how it chooses to go about it. And it doesn't wrap everything in a neat bow. There's definitely a few loose ends, but I like that. And maybe that's explored in the sequel. I'm not too sure, but I like how this film is presented in terms of a character story from A to B to C, and then it's done, it's over, you know. And it definitely leaves you wanting more. It definitely leaves you wanting to find out who Samyev's character really is, who she is in the sense, what her background is, you know, who is a shadow organization, why are they installing chips into people's heads, and, you know, why is it called the Black Cat program. Black Cat is a film that's not reinventing the wheel. It's not doing anything kind of completely brand new or original in the sense. There's so many other films before this, even after this, have done maybe even a better job. Leung, I think, is a much better film than this, of course, but I like what this film has to offer in terms of a nice, slick, well-presented, you know, 90s kind of Hong Kong movie that has all corporations of Canada and US and very international kind of places around the world kind of thing. It feels very much like a James Bond kind of adventure with a struggling woman that is trying to find herself in the process and trying to kind of keep up with the tasks that have been asked of her. And I like where that goes in terms of the action set pieces, like in terms of where it goes in terms of that relationship with the boyfriend character later on, which in the second and third act could be a little bit tighter, but there's small nitpicks, there's small little tiny things in compared to what the film actually is offering overall. That's my thoughts and opinions on Black Cat. If you like films like kind of true crime, the Jackie Chan film, or kind of very nice, kind of slick, kind of quiet, bleaker, kind of 90s kind of slick films kind of thing, thrillers, straight up thrillers, that isn't trying to be anything else, that isn't trying reinventing anything. I think you can have a good time with this one. I think you're going to have really good fun. It's definitely the opposite end of Skinny Tiger, Fire Dragon, much more of a buddy cop comedy based movie. This is definitely much more on the other end of the scope. So I hope you guys enjoy watching this review. What are your thoughts and opinions on Black Cat? Please comment down below. What are your thoughts on the sequel also? Is it worth tracking down? Is it worth trying to find? Is it decent? Is it terrible? Let me know, comment down below. So in the meantime guys, Amphlett Reviews, signing out.